Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining our webinar on how to prevent identity and privilege mishaps with an effective change management strategy. My name is Megha and I'm the product expert here at Manage Engine. Now for today's session, we'll be splitting the session into two. First, I will be listing different ways in which different challenges that IT administrators experience when it comes to changes in Active Directory and how you can combat them using a third-party tool, because native tools sometimes just don't sometimes just fall short when it comes to managing AD efficiently, and why it's necessary for a third-party tool like Manage Engine AD Manager Plus to help you what you want to achieve, right? So you can make use of the chat window, and then if you have any questions, please let me know. I will take your all questions at the end of the session. So and also if you face any audio or video issues, please do let me know. Great. So let me quickly proceed to the agenda. Now, as you know, why we have picked up this particular topic is managing AD infrastructure is an inherently complex responsibility, because there are a number of changes that are happening almost on day-to-day basis, like users being onboarded or moved to different teams or promoted or deprovisioned. So often these pose a major challenge for our IT teams, because sometimes these changes are unexpected or unwarranted, and this leaves the IT team scrambling, trying to figure out what is the status of this particular object, what is the permission that this particular user has, and how do you tackle them one by one, and also not make any mistakes when we address those challenges, right? And to ensure that these objects, the important AD objects, are secure, it's essential to have complete visibility into all the changes that are happening to user accounts and their related attributes, right? So like I said, what we will be taking each of this scenario one by one, and what are the challenges that IT security teams face, and what you can do to tackle it, make it even more easier. And in the second half, I'll give you a demonstration using the tool that we have and to how to address these challenges. Right. So I hope there are no questions so far. Moving on to the first topic, protecting AD from unauthorized challenges. So making changes in AD permissions without having a proper review mechanism in place can unintentionally expose sensitive business data to security vulnerabilities. So whether it's changing the permissions the user has, adding them to groups, giving them permissions to the shared folders within your organization, it's essential to have an access control policy in place for every critical action in AD to prevent users from gaining unauthorized privileges. Now, what you can do is you can introduce a review process where every user change is evaluated by, say, his team manager, or by a corresponding person that he reports to, and then before it's being transferred to an IT administrator, this manager can validate the request, and if it looks good, then he can go ahead and give a green signal, and if not, that particular request has to be reviewed once again and then looked into before it's being transferred to the IT admin. So each request, such as accessing to critical shares or changing their group memberships, must be reviewed with a team before it's being transferred to the IT team. So this way the enterprise resources are not compromised. So this is one way where you can prevent unauthorized changes within your system. And moving on to the next one. So IT administrators generally tend to delegate certain menial tasks to the technicians or other non-IT users, just to make that, just to ensure that the tasks are more simpler, and then managing these tasks are a little easier. But sometimes what happens is, when we are delegating these tasks to, or when we are assigning permissions to certain technicians to do these actions like creating user or resetting passwords. Now, these users may have permissions that are more than necessary, because delegation can get tricky if you're using the built-in delegation control wizard, and enforcing certain necessary restrictions become essential, right? So rather than, this delegation making your task easier when it comes to managing your network, whether it's creating users or changing the properties of the users, you should not come to a point where you regret giving those permissions, because looks like these permissions are not used to the proper manner and they are misused. So having a proper uh, an administrative boundary when you're giving privileges to these technicians, so that can ensure that these privileges are very specific, and and you can also delegate tasks according to the nature of the task. So let's say you want a technician to have permission to just create users, you can do that, or just to reset password, you can do that. Also, if you want to delegate permissions to you technicians based on regions, like if your office, your organization has different locations, different regions, and you want technicians from your particular office or your region to perform actions in that particular region only, then you can do that. So we'll be seeing in the second part of the session how you can granularly delegate permissions to technicians. Moving on. So when users join organizations based on the team that they are joining or based on the role that they have, that IT admins give them a standard set of permissions to access resources that are relevant to their job function. Now, over the time, what happens is for different tasks or different projects, users might be granted permissions to different resources. Now, these access rights ideally should be revoked after the task is complete, right? But it's a good practice for IT admins to review all the user access rights by a role against a checklist of permissions periodically. So let's say when you're reviewing these permissions, or you happen to come across that certain users might have access to top level security groups or critical folders and files that are no longer necessary for that role, right? So periodically tracking all the permissions that are assigned to users for a specific project and then revoking them after the project is complete will resolve this problem. But this task can be quite tedious because the teams has to go and check every user, every individual user's list of permissions, which all groups they belong to, which all resources they can access within their shared folders. So this can get quite complicated. Now, what is the solution to this? So when you're giving permissions to users to say a certain resources within the organization, or when you add them to certain groups because they need to access certain critical folders within your organization, uh, what we can do is you can do that on a temporary basis. So rather than giving them permissions to, let's say, access resources for without specifying a time period, you can give them for this particular day, or let's say for a week, this user will belong to that group, and after that particular period is done, it's expired, then the user will no longer be a part of that group. So this way you can be rest assured that you don't have to go back to that particular user and then check uh, whether this user is the task is complete, whether the permissions need to be revoked. And let's face it, we're not doing for one particular user, or if you're a large organization, these kind of tasks are something that you deal with on a large scale, or sometimes it's really difficult to keep track of every user permission request, and that is when time bound access rights will come in handy, right? And accidental deletions and changes. So making changes to AD and then making an honest mistake, it's completely understandable. Now, but the problem here is while we are dealing with a large number of resources and a large number of, let's say, large number of employees, the computers within your organization, the other objects within your AD, the problem is when you're dealing this with on a large scale, and then when you tend to make these mistakes quite often, again because of your it's completely accidental, or some insider attack, then you need to be worried about. Because as you can see from the report that I have mentioned here, around 51% of the time organizations are worried that in the security of the organization is compromised because of accidental or unintentional insider, and 55% of the time privileged users or IT admins are the biggest security risk to the organization. And like you can see that most of the time confidential business data is at risk. So how do you avoid that? Now, even like when you are a business trying to recover from malicious threat or an honest mistakes, depending on the nature of the business, the downtime that is caused by, let's say, a ransomware attack or a vengeful employee can cost you quite a lot. So I have this stats from the Forrester market study. It's pretty shocking that it's estimated that around um, 100, so this downtime can cost the organization for around $100,000 to $3.5 million per hour, depending on the nature of the organization, depending on the nature of the business. So when you take this into account, you can see that sometimes you need to have some sort of backup and a recovery solution in place, because this can break businesses if you're not careful in the first place. And and you as an IT administrator manually finding and then fixing these accidentally deleted user accounts, or these user privileges that are modified by error, and can be quite time consuming. And then when you're doing it, there could be chance that there are other errors that could rise as well. So having a proper backup and a recovery strategy can help you prevent that. And it's more like something that you bring in, like a preventive mechanism, like a proactive step that you involve, so that if, let's say, if any of this particular incident, like an insider threat or a cyber attack, can leave your systems in a state of disarray, then you have this backup and recovery strategy to fall back into. So I will show you how you can do that using the tool. And moving on to the last one here. So when roles or responsibilities of employees change, like I said, moving to a different team or a different location, IT administrators have to constantly, have to modify the properties of their accounts, add them to relevant groups, move them to another OU. They have to address the group memberships and file server permissions immediately, because this will determine an employee's access to relevant resources. And apart from that, administrators are also constantly bombarded with help desk tickets like password resets, account unlocks. So any delay in processing these kind of modification requests will basically hamper the productivity of the employees and then in the team. So what you can do is you can have a template ready in place, right? So if you're using complex PowerShell scripts to do that, that could be a little more confusing. There you need to you know be an expert at scripting, so that, because scripting itself comes with a lot of difficulty. If there are any errors in the script that you have mentioned, then that script won't execute, and then you'll have to troubleshoot it. So it can get complicated. So a template which will basically have uh, like everything is arranged in its place. So when you have a request for some particular, let's say a user is being moved from team A to team B, then a template basically will have all the necessary attributes that are relevant to the team A and then team B. So when the user is being moved, all you do is just apply the template to that particular user. Now what happens is all his attribute values that are relevant to team A will automatically be changed to team B. So this is like a one-step procedure. So you create a template, and when you have a request like this, so all you have to do is just apply the template. Now this will make more sense when I actually show you the template and how you can use that when it comes to user modification requests. So let's not spend more time on this, and let's quickly go to the tool. And I've been talking a lot about the tool can help you do that, a tool can help you do this. So what exactly is this tool about? So AD Manager Plus is Manage Engine's Active Directory Management and Reporting tool. Now, using this tool, it's a web-based tool, and with just one tool, you can provision accounts in AD, Office 365, provision mailbox in Exchange, Skype for Business, and G Suite. So rather than using different tools like individual platforms, using this tool, it's like a one-shot procedure. All you have to do is just enter the relevant details and just select these platforms. I will show you how you can do that. And then instantly the user account will be created in all these platforms. And also scripting is completely not necessary. You can completely avoid scripting when it comes to AD Manager Plus. So we have around 180 plus predefined reports. So based on users, based on passwords, based on Office 365, um, file server permissions. So it's all categorized, and you can just click and access any of those reports that you want, and the tool will automatically fetch the most up-to-date information from AD, and then it will be displayed. And not only that, you can also export the report in any format. We have 4 to 5 formats that we support. So one is PDF, HTML, CSV, and so on. So, and you can also, let's say you do not want to generate report every single time. Instead, you want the report to be sent to your inbox, right? So you can also do that. And we have a report scheduler facility for that as well. Now, and let's say user deprovisioning, you want to clean up your stale accounts and you want to make it a routine thing, but you do not want to go and individually manage those stale accounts, like removing them from groups, removing their licenses, moving them to a different container. So these are individual actions. So rather than doing this individually for each user object, you can select a bunch of users and then define an automation policy which can encompass all of these actions that I just listed, which is a part of the deprovisioning policy, and then just choose your schedule, date, and time, and the tool will take care of that. And the last tool, which is delegation. So we spoke at length in the beginning about delegation, and then the last one is the workflow. So how you can streamline and monitor ED tasks using the workflow, which is the review approval mechanism that we have. So let's quickly move on to the first one. So how can you protect AD from unauthorized changes? So the answer is workflow. Now, with workflow, what you can do is you can specify who is going to review. Let's say you as a, or the HR instead wants to create a user. So 10 users are being onboarded into the organization, and the HR is just giving a CSV file, or he just has a CSV file containing all those users. Now, this HR can raise a request. So he can just enter the important unique attribute values of the new employees and then raise a request. Now that a request will be sent to the, let's say, his manager, the HR executive's manager, and he can review it, approve it, and then it can be sent to the IT team for execution. So let's say there is something wrong, and there you feel that there is something off with the way the details are given and you need to review it. You can go ahead and also reject it, place comments, and you can ensure that whatever changes. So what I gave is a very basic example, which is user creation. So any change, be it group modification, be it uh, modifying users licenses, all of that, you can put that through a workflow mechanism. So every action will go through this review approve process, and then once it looks completely fine, once it's validated by the reviewers and the approvers, then it will be executed by the IT team. So let me quickly show you the tool that will give you an idea. Right. So this is the AD Manager Plus tool. So I have logged in, and right here we have the workflow on top. Right. So this is what I was talking about. So you can, an HR can place a request, and up to 5 reviewers and up to 5 approvers can be added here. So the reviewers can review the request, assess it like it says here, and then if it looks fine, it can be moved to the reviewed, and then we move to the next stage, which is the approve. And once it's approved, it'll be moved to the execution. So there is completely no way in which an unauthorized change will happen, because one thing, you're enforcing checkpoints in every step. So this step is completely, let's say, it's not mandatory, it's optional, but I would recommend at least having one step between a requester and an executor. So there is somebody who's kind of validating whatever request that has been raised, and the number of reviewers, depending on the severity of the task, you can increase the number of reviewers and then the number of approvers as well. All right. So we have some default workflow that is mentioned here. So which is like, there is a default business workflow which has one requester, one executor, and then there is a user onboarding workflow. So these are some inbuilt workflow that comes with the tool. So there is no restriction. You can create a new workflow, just enter the workflow name, the description, and choose the requesters, reviewers, approvers, and then the executor, right? So if you have any questions, we will take it at the end of the session. So once the session ends, I will be able to address your questions. So moving on, now the question is, who can be requesters, who can be reviewers, approvers, or executors? So right here on the LHS, we have the requesters, reviewers, approvers, and executors. So you can click that requester and you can add who, or like, let's say an HR executive, he can be a requester. So he can be added. So if you click on add new requester, you can choose the user, in our case an HR executive, and then that person will be treated as a requester. Similarly, for reviewers, approvers, you can add any technicians that you want, right? And also you want to be notified every time a requester places a request, or when a request is being approved and it has come to you for approval or reviewal. Then you can also uh, set up assigning rules to ensure that you get an email or an SMS alert for that. Let me quickly show you that. So this is where we define the logic. So you want certain tasks to be automatically assigned to certain technicians, right? So this is where you set the logic for it. So let's say if the action is reset password, then you automatically assign it to technician A. And so like in this particular case, the business workflow has one requester, two reviewers, two approvers, and an executor. So if let's say the business workflow that you selected has, for example, just a requester and an executor, so this is how it will look. So you can enable notification for that. So, and you can also set the priority and who you want it to be assigned to, all of that. So this is where you define the logic. So if this is the request, or if the subject is this, or if the person is the requester is an HR executive, it has to be automatically assigned to this technician. So that can be taken care of as well, because then you don't have to go and individually take a stock of all the requests that you have received and then assign it to technicians. So this will take care of that. Right. So an HR executive. So if you've been using this tool and the HR can raise a request from within the tool, so he will be a technician. And if you have integrated with a help desk tool, then whatever request that HR is raising from an help desk tool, like for example STP or Service Desk Plus, then that will be raised as a request uh, from STP, but it'll be transferred to this workflow within AD Manager Plus, and the action will be carried out in AD Manager Plus, and then the change will be made in AD. So that's how it functions. If you're already familiar with the tool and with the integrations that we offer, then this should help. Moving on, right? So how to avoid privilege creep? Uh, all right, so I just missed one. So quickly going back. So how to configure tight access control? So what we saw was the workflow mechanism. Now you are making tasks easier for you, so you're assigning it to technicians. Now, when you're giving permissions to technicians, you need to be a little wary of the fact that, all right, I have given this permission to a technician. What if there is a possibility of this technician misusing those privileges? And what can you do about it? So in AD Manager Plus, what we have is we have a very granular way of delegation. So so on the top, let me quickly take you through what all options we have. So we have the home, which is the dashboard, and the AD management, which has all the management actions in the tool, which is categorized under AD management. AD reports has all the reports. Office 365, the reporting as well as the management aspect of Office 365 is listed in under the Office 365 tab, and then coming to any delegation where we are right now. So when you're giving a user privilege to be a technician, so here using AD Manager Plus, you can just click on add new technician, and you can select a user or a group and then give them roles. Now roles is where uh, I would like to focus on in today's session, because let me quickly show you how you can define roles for a technician. So when you click on help desk roles, we have create new role. Now this is where you define what all permissions that this particular technician has. So let's say I want this user to have permission to just create users and just reset password. So when I select those options, you can see that there are some more options there are more options that are available. So let me quickly show you that. Now you do not want this technician to enter any important attribute values, like let's say exchange properties or their group memberships, but you want the technician to just enter some basic, like the name or the first name, last name, the email address, the employee ID. Let's say the technician is the HR in this case. So he has to enter just the basic details, and the rest of the details will be taken care of by the IT administrator. And you want to ensure that the HR technician does not have permission to edit all those other or enter all those other attribute values. Now how do you do that? So right here we have something called as the user attribute properties. So when you click on that, right now everything is selected. So I'm just going to unselect all, and then just the general attributes. I want these attributes alone to be made editable or made available for the technician to enter, and the rest of the attribute values, be it Office 365 or its contact attributes or Exchange, all of that I'm going to just leave it unselected. So I click OK. And when it comes to reset password also, I can once again specify what all permission, like what all ways in which or what all options are available for that particular technician. So I can just maybe give a random password option, like so I just allow the technician to just give access to this, and probably maybe not these properties as well. So just this, I can select that, and I can save role. So this is just, I'm going to save this as a test role. Right. So I hit save role. So this is what I meant by granularly giving permissions. So once again, let me quickly show you that particular role that we created. Now what we saw was just user creation, right? So similarly, when it comes to managing other objects as well, you can select the category right here on the LHS and you can choose which management attribute or which management action has to be made available. When it comes to report, which all reports can this particular technician access, whether it's all users or whether it's password related, any of that, you can just select that. So this is how you can make sure that when you're giving permissions to the technician, you are very specific and you are not giving anything that is more than necessary, right? Right. So moving on to the next one. So how to avoid privilege creep. Now, like I said, when you're granting permissions to users like over the time, so this kind of cumulatively adds up, and then there are a lot of permissions that are not revoked, and they even after the project or the task is over, these users have permissions to top level security groups, or they have access to sensitive folders having financial information of the company, and you do not want that. You do not want that kind of permissions lying around. So what we can do is you can just give them access to privileged groups, and giving them permissions just for a limited time. So giving time bound. And another thing what you can do is you let me quickly go to the tool and show you how you can do that. Right. So coming back to workflow, so what you can do is you can raise a request for these time bound access rights. So you can let's say under create request, you can click on user modification, and here is where you can select the task. So in this case, let me give add to group, and here when I click on this plus icon, basically lists all the groups in my domain, and you can just choose any groups, important groups, and then just hit OK. And this is where you can set the time. So here the duration is forever, 1 day, 2 minutes, specific day, you can do that. So I'm going to just say, let's say 1 day. And so you can set the subject, your description, the domain, the user, right? Which user you want to give permissions to, which user should be added to the group. So you can choose that as well. So you can choose multiple users as well, and then hit OK. Now, when you create request, so this request again follows a workflow mechanism. So let's say you have a specific modification request workflow mechanism that's created, then it will go to that particular mechanism request, and then that particular reviewer or approver, whoever it is, will validate it, and then once the administrator executes that request, then that particular user will be added to that group. So this will be valid only after the the administrator executes the request. So once that is done, the user will be added to that particular group that we have specified. And for that period of time, let's say for 1 day, he'll be a part of that group. And after that day, he'll automatically be removed. Now, not just group memberships, we also have uh, folder permissions. So you can specify the subject, what is the action, set folder permissions. You can choose the domain. Here we can select the folders, right? Just click on this and select the folders that you want. Name of the user, you can choose the name of the user. Again, you can just enter the name or you can just select them, and what is the permission that you want to give, whether it's full control or it's just read permissions, or just write, or any of these advanced permissions. You can just select that and then hit done, right? And this is where again you can specify the duration, whether it's forever or 30 minutes or 1 day or a specific day, right? So again, this request will go through a mechanism, and then you can the reviewer or approver validate it, and then that particular task will be executed. And then for this particular date, right, for the 26th of September, uh, this particular user will have permissions to access the folder that you have selected. And then after that, he will not have permissions. So that's how you can ensure that, when you're giving permissions also, it's not necessary that you have to keep track of every permission that you have given and then revoke it. But this will just take a whole lot of work from away from your hands, and you can just focus on your other tasks. Now, accidental changes and deletions, right? You deleted an important security object or a group, right? So this can be quite difficult because you'll have to like configure that again and then add all the permissions, assign all the permissions like how it was before. And you do not want your organization, your team productivity to be put on hold or put at risk because of a small mistake that you made. Now you can have a backup and a recovery solution to completely avoid that. Like, moving on, let me quickly show you the tool. Right, so now backup and recovery is a pretty new feature, just came out a few months back. So you can see that we have a tab called backup. So here you can see that we have, it just gives a complete overview of what is the status. So you can configure your settings, backup settings here, right? So what are the OUs that you want to back up? Let's say you have some important OUs which contains important security related objects like, important administrator accounts and your important groups, then you can just back up that particular OU alone. Or if you want to back up every OU, just you can go ahead and choose that. And what all objects that you want to back up, whether it's just users or whether it's computers, contacts, or even if you're specifying a user, what all attributes you want to back up, right? So let's say whether it's managed objects or member of, or whether it's direct reports, your manager, all of that you can select here. And when you want the full backup to happen. So full backup, if you want to have, like schedule it on a non-business day, you can do that, right? You can just set the day and the time, and you want to take the backup on a weekend, you can do that as well. Now let's say that it's unrealistic to expect changes to not happen, like let's say until the full backup happens, so for a month there are no changes. No, that's not possible. But you also want to make sure that every change that you make within that period of time is documented and it's been recorded. So that is where an incremental backup helps. So let's say you want to have an incremental backup schedule going every single day or every week, you can do that. So this will, so if there are any changes to objects that are happening on day-to-day basis or every week, or let's say once in a week it has happened, then only those changes will be taken into account. So it will not take a full backup of all the objects, but it'll just record the change alone, and that changed attribute value will be stored, right? And you can specify how many backups you want to retain, because storage space is, you don't want to like take up all your storage space. I just want last 12 backups or last 15 backups, you can do that, right? So this is how you can configure your backup. And similarly you can do the recovery settings as well. Now, when you go for recovering an object, so we have two options. So let's say you want to simply restore an object with all its attribute values, intact, then you can do that. Now, let's say you want to restore version, let's say not the last version, but the version before that, you can do that as well. So that comes under granularly restore. Now, you can choose the object and what, let's say, so in this particular case, I've just initiated one backup, and that is why it just says one backup. So if there are multiple backups running, it will show the number of backups. And then when you click on that, it'll show you what are the changes, and it'll show you which backup, what has been changed, and you can granularly go and pick. So for this particular object, I want the value to be restored from version number say 3, and this particular attribute value has to be restored. So that's how you can change. So let's say you're making multiple changes to a particular object and you made a change which is not correct. Instead, you want to revert it back to the previous version. That's where a granular restore will help you. So rather than just blindly restoring everything from the last backup, you can specifically go down and check, hey, so this is the attribute value, this is the version from which I want it to be backed up, because the latest one is not what I want. Then granular restore will help you. So this is where it'll make your restoring and your backing up even more helpful. So it's just going to make your task easy. So you can select the object, you can what is the change that has been made, you can see that, and then pick the one that you want to. So having a backup and a recovery strategy is not like a luxury, but it's more like a necessity, right? So moving on. Now, user modification. We spoke at length about user modification. So users being moved to one teams, to move to different teams, being promoted, and having all these changes can be kind of overwhelming, and then dealing with these changes one at a time can be difficult. So let's say a user is being moved from one particular team to another, but another team, and a lot of attribute values has to be changed, right? So his reporting to has to be changed, his maybe his contact attributes, maybe his location, like his office address if he's being moved to a different location, and also his group memberships, his folder permissions, his home folder. So many things has to be changed. You have to address that for multiple users. Now, I said in the beginning that a template will help you do that. So let me show you what exactly a template is, and this will give you a better understanding of what I was telling in the beginning of the session. So when you click on AD management, we have these templates. So this template is not just restricted to user creation, but other objects as well, and not just for creation, but for modification, right? So let me quickly show you what a user modification template is and how it's going to help you. Now, I'm going to click on create new template and show you what a layout looks like. So this is basically how the user creation or user any other object creation layout looks like. It's very similar to that. The change what we have here is you will be specifying certain values in these attribute fields, right? Now, let's say I have a template for uh, marketing department for the US office, right? So this is a template that I'm just creating, and I will just enter these attribute values which are, like relevant to the marketing department in the US, and I'll just enter that alone here, right? So I'll leave out the first name, the last name, and all those unique attribute values. I will not touch that, but I will just enter these values around, let's say the description, the office, the extension, the contact attributes, all of that I will enter the reporting to, right? And and when a user is being modified or when a user is being moved, so I will just save this template and I will apply that template, or I will modify that user using a template. So I will show you how that is done. Now, before moving to that, I will show you what is a modification rule. So right here, we have an option called modification rule. So I'm going to create a new rule. Now it's quite easy. So a user is being modified from department A to department B. Let's say he's being moved from finance to IT, right? Just an example here. So I've just listed here, this is the condition. So the tool will check if the department is being moved from A to IT. Now, what are the values that are going to be changed? So let's say his member of is going to be changed. So I'll add some groups here, and similarly his manager will be changed. So I will choose the manager object right here, just picking a random object right here, and I add that, and the description is also going to be changed. Now he's the marketing department, right? So this just I'm sorry, he's just a part of the IT department. So this is just an example. I'm just showing what you can do. So you can similarly you can specify any number of conditions right here. So whether the office is changed or whether the manager is this particular person. So you can add similarly many conditions. So we have the or and option. You can add that here. And here you can specify if this is being met, if this is a yes, then what are the changes? If this is satisfied, then what are the attribute value changes? So the idea of creating every template for every single scenario, let's say marketing department for US or marketing department for UK and marketing department for the Middle East. So that can be, that is fine. That is all right. You can do that. But rather than doing multiple templates, so if you're doing this for all the departments, all regions, it's going to be a lot of templates. But we do not have any restrictions to the number of templates that you can create. You can create any number of templates that you want. Now, if you're going to do so, so rather than doing what I would recommend is rather than creating multiple templates, you can just have one template. So for marketing department or for, let's say, a region for US office, and then you can just set if the department is this, if the department is B, if the department is C, or if the office is this. Similarly, you can go at permutations and combinations, and you can create roles. So when you're modifying a user and then you're picking the template, it'll check, okay, what is the change? Has the department been made? Is the department changed? Yes. Then the tool will check what are the values that are assigned here, and it'll immediately rewrite the or override the existing values with the values that you've specified here. So let me quickly show you how you can do that. So we have modify single user option right here. Now you can choose modify user. So let's say I'm just going to pick one user object right here, and this will basically load the user attribute value. So this looks like a test user. So we'll just go ahead, and this is where you're going to choose the template. So if I click on change, you can see that these are the number of these are the modification templates that are created. Now, if we have created anything, we can go ahead and select that. So I'm just going to pick a template right here, and I click OK, right? So, and then once you expand, you can also click preview. So the template that I have chosen basically does not have any value. So let me quickly see if I can pick a template with some values that are already populated. So let me quickly click on preview. Well, let's try another one, and then if not, I'll just explain how it looks. Right. So all right, too bad. Anyway, so let me show you how it is done. So let me give you a demo. So let's say we have chosen a selected template. Now we'll see when you click on preview, what happens is it'll show what are the old values and what are the existing values. Now let's say the department as of now is IT, right? And when you're moving the department value to be marketing or finance or HR, then that particular attribute value will be changed, right? So that will be displayed. And then the other attribute values, like let's say your description or your office, your telephone number, all of that will be, it'll show a list of the current values and what it'll be when you click on update user, right? So it'll show the previous values and the values that that you currently wanted to have. So that is what a preview option. This is just to give an idea of, like, before you make the change, you can just review all those changes, and then if it looks good, then you click on update user. If not, you go and edit those attribute values and then again click on update user. So these kind of simple tricks to manage your changes within your AD, these tricks are not available in native tools, and that's why AD Manager Plus tries to be that one single point of tool where IT administrators and IT security teams would reach out for when it comes to AD management and reporting. Now, what I have covered today is extremely like I have just scraped the top of the surface. The tool has a lot more features. So we have just seen just a few tabs right here, and I have not even covered the entire section of each topic that we covered today. So this is just for the topics that we had that we were discussing today. That is how to have a change management strategy and how it's going to help you prevent having any sort of mishaps with your user identities and privileges. So that brings us to the end of the session. Just one more action, and then we'll be concluding the session. So what I have will be I'll be sharing two poll questions, just two. So I will be initiating a poll right here. So I will just launch, and then I'll give 30 seconds, and I'll let you answer those questions, and then I'll launch the second question. So I hope that's we've understood that. Let me quickly launch the first question. You'll be able to see the first question on your screen right now. Great. So I will be launching the second question now. Right. I hope you can see the second question on your screen. All right. Closing now. Great. So thank you so much. So that brings us to the end of the session. So I hope that gave you a good understanding of what our tool is, and how you can address all these challenges with our tool. Now, if you have any questions, I will be available, and then you can make use of the chat window, and I'll address your questions. And also, we have so many product specific workshops that are available. So if you want to like try our product, we also have, if you've not tried before, so we have a demo set up online. So I'll be sharing the link right here in the chat window. You can try that. That'll be available all the time, and you can just try out the actions, just get an understanding of what the product is using our demo tool right here. And if you have any other questions, you can also reach out to our support team. So I have given the contact address right here, and I will also send you my email address. So if you have any questions, I'll be glad to help you with that as well. So just entering my email address in the chat window, please go ahead and if you have any questions regarding the webinar or our product or anything, just do reach out to me. So I hope the session was beneficial, and I'm just glad that we have a really good turnout today, and every session we hope to make it better and informative for our attendees. So thank you so much for taking time off your schedule and then joining us. So have a great day. Thank you all.